If God knew thousands of years in advance that Jesus the Messiah would be resurrected from the dead, and his resurrection would be the greatest thing ever, don't you think that God would have created a feast to celebrate it thousands of years in advance? If so, where has it been hiding all these years? Okay, Sherlock, where is it? It's elementary, my dear Dr. Watson. In fact, it's so elementary, it starts at the beginning. Can you guess where? Hi, I'm Messianic Pastor Guy Gifford. Biblically, did God promise to humanity that the sinless won't stay dead, and that God intends for those who are perfectly righteous to live forever? Yes, actually. The consequence of sin is death. God told Adam in Genesis 2:17, "In the day that you disobey me and eat from this tree, you will surely die." And there has been death since he ate it. But what would have been the consequences had Adam not sinned? It is really not a consequence, but Adam would have continued to live forever. God's righteous judgment is found in Jeremiah 31:30, that each person will die for his own iniquity. That means each person dies because each person has been unfair, has done sin. But what would happen if there was one who never did any iniquity, sin, yet his heart was stopped by violence? Before I answer that really tough question, answer for me this really easy question. Who started your heart before you were born? Yes, God. And God restarted all the hearts of all the dead people in the Bible and other places who came back to life. We find the answer to that really tough question in Psalms 16:10, which says, God won't allow his Holy One to undergo decay. So we find that if someone would be truly sinless, God wasn't going to allow his body to decay. God would cause that sinless person to be resurrected from the dead. Jesus, the Messiah, was that sinless person. Over and over in the Old Testament, we learn from God that it is sin to offer anything with leaven in it on the sacrificial altar. Strictly, it's not to be done. Thus, even in the Old Testament, leaven in the burnt sacrifice to God is equated with sin. Moreover, in the New Testament, sin is equated with leaven directly many times. Minutes after the start of the Hebrew Passover feast, God had also ordained the starting of the 7-day Hebrew festival of unleavened bread. So now you can put the miracle of Jesus' resurrection together with God's all-knowing advanced plan of a celebration. God ordained the Hebrew feast of unleavened bread to mark and celebrate that God's Messiah Jesus was going to be resurrected from the dead. God was telling us that from the moment Jesus' heart stopped pumping and he was dead, it would be less than 7 days until Jesus' heart would start beating again. And 7 days until everyone would hear that Jesus had been raised from the dead. And that, my friend, is how God created a feast to celebrate Jesus, the Messiah's resurrection, thousands of years in advance. the Hebrew Feast of Unleavened Bread, celebrating the sinlessness of the Messiah. Would have started minutes after Jesus died and was buried. Rabbis today teach that the unleavened bread for this should be poor man style, meaning as plain as one can make it, with just flour and water. This sounds very appropriate for a very sad funeral meal. And at the end of Unleavened Bread week, there was to be another required gathering, which amazingly lines up with the disciples' gathering, where Jesus walks through the wall to reveal himself alive to all of them. In my previous video about Good Friday, Passover, I made the point that requiring unleavened bread in the first Passover, when Israel escaped from slavery in Egypt, was an unnecessary, far extra requirement, which wasn't needed under the circumstances for the Hebrews to leave Egypt, except that God said to do it. And this is why God said to do it. Because the unleavened bread alone is God's prophecy in his ordained feasts, which points to the Messiah's future resurrection from the dead. Next time you think of Easter, remember Jesus, the sinless Messiah, which death could not hold, and that God created the Feast of Unleavened Bread to memorialize both the Messiah's sinlessness and his resurrection. Let me know in the comments if you think the seventh day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread was the first time Jesus revealed himself to all the disciples, minus doubting Thomas, or that the seventh day of the feast was when Jesus revealed himself to doubting Thomas, and why you think so. If you've learned something new today, then give the video a like and share it with a friend. Here are some other cool videos that I think you'll enjoy. Just click on the channel name Guru Guide Guy Gifford, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Or like this page so you don't miss another upcoming video. This has been Messianic Pastor Guy Gifford. God blesses you for meditating on his ways.